This time, I'm going to ask Scott if he would for the resolution of appreciation for the Chairman Beth Ward.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, if we can get the board to approve both both resolutions for former Chairman Beth Ward and you as
Motion to approve.
Vice Chairman.
So moved. Second.
As move and properly second that we approve both recognitions. That'll be known by raising the right hand. Thank you very much. I think it's the majority.
We can ask Commissioner Beth Ward to come down with us first, please. Tonight, Mr. Chairman, we have a resolution to present to former Chairman Beth Ward. If you'd like me to read it.
Yes, sir, we would.
Okay. It's entitled Office of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners, Resolution of Appreciation Honoring Beth B. Ward as Chairman. Whereas Beth B. Ward served faithfully and honorably as Chairman of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners from December 2018 to December 2019. And whereas Chairman Ward provided the Board of Commissioners with steadfast leadership and commitment as Chairman. Whereas the Board of Commissioners expresses their appreciation to Beth Ward for her guidance, organization, leadership skills, and commitment to service during her tenure as Chairman. Whereas Chairman Ward represented the county and board at various ribbon cuttings, meetings, and special events, such as the Southwest Bypass opening ceremony. Whereas under Chairman Ward's leadership, the county provided assistance to the Pitt County Sheriff's Office in the renegotiation of the federally housed inmates and implemented a plan for the purchase of body cameras. Whereas under Chairman Ward's leadership, Pitt County affirmed its commitment to provide industrial development services and functions in the county, strengthen the governance of Vidant Medical Center in its partnership with East Carolina University's Brody School of Medicine, and implemented a school justice partnership. And whereas under Chairman Ward's leadership, Pitt County realized substantial progress on several capital projects as listed. First, the purchase of the Warren Farm property for industrial development, the completion of the Candlewick Area Sanitary Sewer District, completion of the Woodmore Subdivision road improvements, and fourth, oversaw the continued construction of the animal shelter expansion and renovation project. Whereas during her tenure as chairman, she also has been an integral part of Pitt County government by serving on various boards and committees, such as the East Carolina University Board of Visitors as an ex officio member, the Pitt Community College Board of Trustees, and the Vidant Medical Center Board of Trustees. Now therefore be resolved, the members of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners commend Beth B. Ward for her efficient leadership and outstanding service as Chairman of the Board of Commissioners for the calendar year 2019, adopted the 16th day of 2019, signed by the then Vice Chairman, Melvin McLawhorn, and attested by our Clerk, Kimberly W. Hines. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Beth, I want to thank you for your leadership and we wish you well and continuous success as you go into your other part.
Thank you very much. We've been at this a while.
Turn around. Okay. Mr. Ward, if you'll stay down here, and Mr. Chairman McLawhorn, we're going to trade. You're going to be presenting this as the former chairman.
Okay, you get on that.
So we have a like resolution for former chairman, Vice Chairman Melvin McLawhorn, that will be presented by our former board chairman, Beth B. Ward. Would you like me to read the
Yes,
resolution?
please.
Okay. I'll get all these titles and roll straight here. So it's entitled Office of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners, Resolution of Appreciation honoring Melvin McLawhorn as Vice Chairman. Whereas Melvin McLawhorn has served faithfully and honorably as Vice Chairman of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners from December 2018 to December 2019. Whereas Mr. McLawhorn has provided the Board of Commissioners with steadfast leadership and commitment as Vice Chairman. Whereas the Board of Commissioners expresses their appreciation to Melvin McLawhorn for his guidance, organization, leadership skills, and commitment to service during his tenure as Vice Chairman. Whereas under Vice Chairman McLawhorn's leadership, Pitt County provided assistance to the Pitt County Sheriff's Office in the renegotiation of the federally housed inmates and implemented a plan for the purchase of body cameras. Whereas Melvin McLawhorn has, through his attentiveness and devotion, exhibited concern for the overall improvement and quality of life for the citizens of Pitt County. Whereas under Mr. McLawhorn's leadership, Pitt County realized substantial progress on several capital projects. Again, the Warren Farm purchase, the completion of the Candlewick Area Sanitary Sewer District, and the completion of the Woodmore subdivision road improvements, as well as the animal shelter expansion and renovation project. Whereas during his tenure as vice chairman, he's also been an integral part of Pitt County government by serving on various boards and committees, such as the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, Metropolitan Planning Organization, otherwise known as the MPO, serving on the TAC, the Technical Advisory Committee, as an alternate to the Rural Planning Organization, otherwise known as the RPO, and again, the TAC on that one, and the Pitt County Transit Advisory Board, and the Biden Medical Center Joint Policy Review Committee. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the members of the Pitt County Board of Commissioners commend Melville McLawhorn for his efficient leadership and outstanding service as Vice Chairman of the Board of Commissioners for the calendar year 2019, again adopted the 16th day of December 2019, signed by our former Chairman Beth B. Ward and tested by our Clerk Kimberly Deputy Hines.
Congratulations,
Thank
Vincent,
you.
and good luck.
Thank you.
In your chairmanship.
I appreciate you, Anita.
Take care.
Thank you.
Turn around to the picture.
Okay. Alan, at this time we have public hearing. James Rose, if he would come forward. Proposed amendment, Pitt County subdivision ordinance.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We have 3 planning-related public hearings for your attention tonight. The first one deals with the subdivision ordinance, and just a recap, since we've got several new members, we've had subdivision regulations in the county since 1972, and remember, these are all based on the North Carolina general statutes. The enabling legislation allows us to actually provide certain requirements within our subdivision ordinance, and whenever those general statutes are changed, we also have to react similarly. So tonight, we have a short amendment that's coming before you, and this is a result of some recent changes to the general statutes. So this information has been presented twice to our planning board back in October and November. In November, we had a public hearing and did get a recommendation for approval to bring forward to you tonight for a public hearing. With this all deals with the performance guarantees, and these are not maintenance guarantees, Mr. Colson. We talked a lot about maintenance guarantees in the past. These are the performance guarantees. So what happens with this is money and/or other collateral that's provided to the county when a developer opts not to complete all the improvements before the final plat is recorded. So thereby, he's able to go sell lots without the improvements being completed. We're holding a guarantee to make sure the roads, the drainage, what other improvements are necessary go in at a certain time. So with this tonight, these new changes actually reflect what the new legislation reads. And what it does do primarily is it affords the developer the opportunity to determine the length of time it will take to make the improvements. Before, we had a certain length of time. Now, it's pretty much under the developer's control. So in this case, whereas we had a 2-year period before, this is a 1-year period unless the developer determines that the scope of work requires additional time. So with that, there's some other language that goes along with this that talks about the extension of some of the guarantees, and at a certain time, we would need to ensure that these improvements are made. So this is all within our subdivision ordinance. It affords the development community another option versus putting the improvements in up front. So with that, I'd recommend, Mr. Chairman, that we move forward with adopting this with an effective date of January the 1st of 2020. And with that, we're ready for the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Now I declare the public hearing open. Anyone sign up to speak?
No, sir, nobody signed up unless there's somebody in the audience.
You have anyone in the audience who wish to speak to this? I hear none. I now declare the public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board, please?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this proposed amendment to the Pitt County subdivision ordinance.
Okay. Has been moved.
Second.
Has been moved and properly second that we approve this amendment. All those in favor, let it be known by raising your right hand.
And I believe I have
Can we
fixed your
vote now?
system. If you want to use your system, you may.
I'm sorry, it's system work, okay.
I believe so.
Please vote. Okay. Is that me? Okay, then. It has passed. Thank you very much. Now, James, you're up again.
The second public hearing for tonight is a rezoning request by Glandon Forest Equity LLC. This, of course, is a rezoning request. Just to make sure you're aware of this, this is a straightforward rezoning, not a conditional district, so we don't know the intended use necessarily. We are looking at a general commercial request, and therefore, if it is approved tonight, any of those land uses that are included under the general commercial listing would be allowed within the new zoning district there if it's approved tonight. So just some background information about this particular request. This is located right at Chicod Crossroads, just across the intersection from the school itself. Property's owned by Ms. Dixon, and it's on the eastern side of NC 43 South. Here's a map just to orient you as to where it is. It's an L-shaped lot that actually has frontage on both 43 and Stokestown St. John's Road, so it will have some frontage right across from a parking lot there at Chicod Elementary School. Also, the existing land uses in the area, the blue, of course, is on this particular corner is all of the Chicod Elementary School property. There's also a church nearby, a couple of other smaller commercial areas right there at the intersection as well, and a mixed use of different types of residential, whether it be site-built homes or manufactured homes in the area. This is our land use plan, and you can see this particular parcel falls right within our commercial crossroads area, and that is certainly something we look at anytime we're looking at a rezoning as to whether or not it is consistent with the land use plan. And in this case, we believe that it is. Just to remind you, a commercial crossroad community designation is intended to include limited commercial land uses that are appropriate to the crossroads development. And appropriate land uses include a mix of residential, public, institutional, and commercial uses, which are already there in that area. This does not require sanitary sewer. Private septic systems are allowed. And the category is designated at prominent crossroad locations like at Stokes or Belvoir. So here at Chicod, it's the same way. Our zoning map already indicates some commercial on 3 of the 4 corners, again, the school being located on the 4th corner there, and this particular area would wrap around some of that existing commercial. And actually a portion of what you're looking at tonight is already zoned general commercial. And the general commercial district is primarily intended to accommodate a wide range of retail, service, and other limited wholesale uses, as well as some moderate density multifamily residential uses. And as I've already alluded to, planning staff finds that this is consistent with our land use plan and also is reasonable and in the public's best interest. Planning board concurred with us at our November 20th meeting and also recommended approval. So we have 2 motions for you tonight, to first adopt the consistency statement, and it's rather long, and also to approve the request by Glandon Forest Equity. And with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Now declare the public hearing open. Anyone signed to speak to?
Yes, sir, we have one person signed up, Matt Louder, if you'll come forward and give us your name and address.
Mr. Chairman, I'll keep your time at 5 minutes per speaker.
Thank you.
I'll be quick. Good evening. My name's Matt Louder, 4004 Barrett Drive in Raleigh. And I'm actually an engineer, and I'm here working with the developer and just basically here to answer any questions you may have about the proposed rezoning.
Thank you. Thank
I
you
do
very much.
have one question for you. This is right in my backyard. A lot of people are very excited about it. The only concern is, will the main entrance, will it be off of Highway 43 or across from the school? Because across from the school, there's already an entrance to the school, which gets crazy in the mornings and the afternoons. So that was really the only concern I've heard.
Okay. Sure. The development plan as we have it for now is just access off 43. There will be no access off St. John Drive.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak?
Unless there's somebody in the audience, that's
No.
all we have signed up.
Anybody in the audience wish to speak? I hear none. Now declare the public hearing closed. What's the favor of the board?
Do we need two separate motions?
I think you.
Well, you can put 'em
both-
together.
You can include both of them. If you want to move it.
Yes. Okay, so I make a motion to, one, adopt the consistency statement and
Approve the rezone.
to approve the rezoning.
Second that.
Has been moved and properly second. All, let's note by voting, please. It passed. Thank you very much. Okay, Ms. Rowe.
Okay, and the third public hearing is on an item that the board irregularly discusses, and that's the extension of an ETJ, or an extraterritorial jurisdiction by a municipality. In this case, we have a request by the town of Farmville, and specifically, it's on behalf of the property owners that it's only one parcel under consideration tonight. The owners of that parcel are also requesting this change. Give you a little detail about the parcel, and then I'll get into the policy that requires this public hearing tonight. This is to extend the existing ETJ northwest of the current limits and ETJ of Farmville, and this particular property is owned by Ann Bird and C. Bynum Satterwhite. Mr. Satterwhite is here tonight. The request will allow the property owner to participate in Electric City's Smart Sites program, and that deals with economic development and having sites ready for development as quickly as possible, shovel-ready. This parcel is about 88 acres total, and it is right at the interchange, or close to the interchange, of 264 with US 258. So the parcel itself also has frontage along Stantonsburg Road and 258. So this is the tract in yellow. This also deals with some special legislation that the town of Farmville has sought in the past. Back in '99, they did get approval through the General Assembly to allow, based on their size or their population within the town, typically they could only extend 1 mile outside their current corporate limits. They sought legislation, and it was approved to go up to 2 miles outside the limits, those limits, with the approval of the Board of Commissioners. So that really kicked in 2003 when we instituted countywide zoning, and that's when our new policy went in place to consider any ETJ extensions. A lot of things came into play. We wanted to make sure that if any ETJs were being extended, that number one, the community had good planning and management tools in place. It also afford an opportunity for any of the affected property owners to come in and speak to the board as well. So some of the considerations: is there a land use plan in place there? Are the subdivision and zoning regulations? Is it a logical extension? We've seen some kind of crazy configurations in the past, so in this case, this is a logical extension. Is it within the anticipated natural growth area? And is there a demonstration of need? So the process has already been initiated through our planning board. We dealt with that at our November planning board meeting. We heard public comments there. Tonight it's before you, and they're seeking action after the public hearing. So some of the facts as far as what's in place here, just to remind folks, if the ETJ is extended and it's approved by the board, the municipality still has to follow the regular standard process for extending the ETJ. So there will be additional public hearings required. The ETJ does not mean there will be taxes imposed by the municipality. The municipal land use codes, zoning subdivision, minimum building codes through the building code process would also be enforced by the municipality versus the county at that point. The impact to the property owners, certainly those are new regulations, maybe a bit different than what the county imposes currently. And the overall representation there, although they could have representation in that area on the Board of Adjustment and Planning Board, they would not have it on the town Board of Commissioners. So just some other things that weighed into our recommendation along with what the Planning Board considered. The town of Farmville does have a land use plan that's currently in place on this particular parcel. Farmville also provides the utilities, water, sewer, and also electric to this site, and it is in a geographic area that's within service area from the town itself. So with that, Planning Board as well as planning staff are recommending approval of this request, and with that, Mr. Chairman, we're ready for the public hearing.
All right, I now declare the public hearing open. Anyone?
Yes, sir, we have 2 people signed up. Byram Satterwhite, if you'll come forward. Or Justin Oaks.
Evening, Commissioners. Justin Oaks, Planning Director with the Town of Farmville, 3672 North Main Street in Farmville. Really, I'm just here if you have any additional questions. James has pretty well covered everything to this point, but if there are any additional questions, I'll be glad to help fill those as well.
Okay. Any questions? Anyone else?
Mr. Satterwhite, do you want to speak?
No, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else in the audience wish to speak? I hear none. I now declare the public hearing closed. It's the pleasure of the board.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the extraterritorial jurisdiction extension request by the town of Farmville.
Second that.
It's been moved and properly second. Let's vote. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to ask Mr. Randy Gentry and James Morris if you come.
Good evening, Chairman McLaughlin and Commissioners. Here this evening to ask for a public hearing for the proposed changes of the Fire Service District that we brought to you back in November 18th, where the board adopted the report containing the changes for that area. The North Carolina General Statute 153-304.3 provides that the commissioners may, by resolution, relocate the boundary lines if the districts were established for substantially similar purposes, and we have followed that statute. And in that report that you adopted at the meeting back in November, all of the information that was required by statute is there: map of the current proposed district, a statement indicating the proposed boundary, a plan for providing that service to the area, and the effect the changes would have on the taxable property. The report was made available to the public by having a copy in the clerk to the board's office. And the statute says for at least 2 weeks, and it was placed there November the 19th. And then we advertised a notice of public hearing twice in the Daily Reflector in the State Connected section. And now we just asked for the public hearing.
Okay. I'll sign up for it.
Yes, sir, we have one person signed up, Steve West, if you'll come forward, and the attorney will give our statement.
Let me stop. I now declare the public hearing open. So,
Okay. Mr. West, if you'll come forward, and the attorney will state our
I'll keep your time at 5 minutes per speaker. Pitt County welcomes comments on all matters of public concern related to this public hearing. And I'll keep your time. Please state your name and address prior to speaking.
All right, thank you for having me. My name's Steve West. I live at 3006 Steuben Court, which is in the same subdivision. I'll make this quick. First of all, I just really want to go out and say thank you. Thank you very much for taking this consideration, this recommendation that we have, and taking it seriously. Especially want to thank Deputy Director Fire Marshal Jay Morris for a lot of the stuff he had to put in on that, as well as the Assistant Attorney, Mr. Jordan. Thank you for your time with that. Commissioner Lauren White, and past Commissioner Glenn Webb, who helped get the ball rolling with this. I also want to thank all the fire chiefs that were involved and had a hand in making sure that this took place and didn't cause any strain on anybody else. I really want to take the time to thank them and placing life safety as a top priority. And all the efforts that y'all gave as a board, all the efforts that people who I have not spoken about here have really put time and effort into making sure that this was the right move. So thank you for your time and thank you for your effort.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else in the audience like to speak? If not, I declare this public hearing closed. What's the pleasure of the board?
I'd like to make a motion
It's
to approve.
okay. Has been moved and properly second. Let's vote. Thank you very much. Now we have public address to the board. Do we have any?
Yes, we have one person signed up, Michael Lovelace. Will you come forward, please, and give your name and address? And for the training, we'll give our statement again briefly on public addresses.
Yes, for public addresses to the board, Pitt County welcomes comments on all matters of public concern. I'll keep your time at 3 minutes per speaker. And if you'll just state your name and address before you begin, I'll then start your clock.
Okay, my name's Michael Lovelace. I currently reside 1246 Twisting Creek Road. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, Mr. Elliott, Madam Counselor, and of course, Madam Clerk. Last time I was here, I was not able to make a proper salutation. I was so flustered, and I felt burdened with what I was about to do. Last month, I brought to this board a petition for 761 Maple Ridge Road. And I would like you all to know that prior to creating the petition and walking the neighborhood to get all the signatures that I got, and before coming here last month, I was told by many naysayers that I was wasting my time and that this body wouldn't do anything to help our situation, or if this body did, then it would be far from any of our desired outcomes. I am going to attest here today that they were all wrong. No less than 4 different inspectors, to my knowledge, and there may be more, have been out to this property to inspect it. I've since learned that members of this body, members of the inspection department and the attorney's office met the day after I presented the petition. Just 2 weeks ago, we almost had a hearing on a demolition order to be issued at the Buildings Inspections Office. However, after being notified of the hearing, the owner asked for postponement, which was granted. But I've heard today that the hearing has been rescheduled for December 30th. Now, I'm under no false impressions that this demolition is going to take place in the next few weeks. I know this is not going to happen. I've been told that it could take anywhere from 3 months to even a year. But just the fact that we are here where we are today is a testimony that this body and you all's commitment to public safety is there, and it's strong and it's true. I want to thank you all wholeheartedly for your work and quick response to this problem. Thank you. Thank you. I am very glad that the naysayers were all wrong.
Thank you
That's
very
my
much.
statement.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
That was something positive. We appreciate that.
How often do we get that?
At this time, we should have an item for the report Start with you, Scott, if you would.
Yes, first item to report, we have our tax collector administrator, Sam Kroom. He'll come forward.
Good evening, Commissioner.
evening.
I'm Chairman McClawhorn, Commissioners, Mr. Manager. It's good to be with y'all tonight. Tonight I'm reporting on the 2019 November collection report. Fiscal year today, we're currently at 67.32%. This time last year, we're at 68.32%. Tax administration continues to pursue all delinquent taxes owed to the county. It is my recommendation that y'all accept the report as presented.
Move approval.
Second it.
Move properly second. Let it be approved. Let's vote, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Barnett.
Good evening, Chairman and rest of the board. I have for you tonight a report for November 30th, 2019. We are at 41.67% of the year. On the general fund, we have collected 46.9% of our anticipated revenues, and we have spent 41.2%. On the solid waste fund, we have brought in 54.33% of our revenues and spent 36.81%. If you guys have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer.
Mr. Chairman, move approval.
Okay. It's been moved and properly second that we approve. Let's vote, please. Thank you. Scott, and the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association.
Yes, on this next item, the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association, we've had a request from Commissioner Mary Perkins Williams to have their board chair, Michael Brooks, and one of their board members, Linda Smith, come forward to the podium to make a presentation. I believe this is a informational item for the Board of Commissioners to, learn who the board members are who are in attendance, and also receive some remarks from the board chair regarding the activities, maybe purpose, vision, so forth of the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association.
Okay.
So, turn it over to you, Ms. Smith.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Elliott, Ms. Gallagher. It's good to see you all again and hope everybody's doing well. I'm Linda Smith, and I'm going to begin my short presentation before our chair presents. I've created a short Christmas story that I would like to share with you and read to you. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful little river meandering through the county. The river entertained many fishermen, swimmers, adventuresome souls, and also served as a waterway for steamships, cargo barges. Over the years, the history of the river. At Christmas time, Santa always delivered At Christmas time, Santa always delivered toys and goodies to both sides of the river, north and south. The years went by and all seemed merry and bright, but then some of the residents living north of the river noticed maybe all was not so merry and bright, because Santa seemed to be leaving more toys and goodies south of the river. Why? Some asked. What's going on? No answer was given. Hark! Maybe the Grinch was to blame. Bewildered, a concerned group of citizen elves got together and formed the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association to find some answers and explanations for the economic inequities evident to all. Now, the beautiful river is not to blame. It still quietly flows through the county, but now serves as an obvious economical divide between the north and the south. We wish Santa a safe journey this Christmas. as he leaves the North Pole and travels across the lands, the mountains, and the rivers to bring happiness and joy to all. Merry Christmas. Alas, the Northern Pitt County Association citizen elves are here tonight, some of us. I would like to introduce the board members of the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association. Mr. Michael Brooks, who will be speaking in just a few minutes, Mr. Chester Rogers Jr., Reverend Dr. Rex Fleming, Miss Veronica Robertson, Miss Ruthie Frederick, Miss Linda Smith, Mr. Robert Moore, Miss Vernita Howard. We also have lots of supporters, Mr. Rick Smith, who is here tonight with us, Mr. Herbert Vines, who said he was unable to attend tonight, and lots of others. But we are a strong group, getting stronger, and we are here to support north of the river. I appreciate your listening to my story, and without further ado, I am introducing Michael Brooks, who is chair, and he will be speaking to you on behalf of the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association. Thank you all, and Merry Christmas to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair and Commissioners, I just learned I'm an elf. I'm wearing the appropriate color, I guess. I've been told, oh, by the way, I'm newly elected. My partner saw fit to put me in this position, so I'm gonna take it on, all right? I understand, or I've been told that you may have copies of our mission statement.
Yes.
I'd like to read it for the sake of the audience and then make a few short comments, and then I'll be done.
Can you speak a little louder?
Oh, sure, I'm sorry. I want to take a moment to read the mission statement, our mission statement for the sake of the audience, and then make a few comments, and we'll be done. The mission statement itself says that the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association, Inc. is organized exclusively for charitable and educational purposes, which include, but are not limited to, the following. A, to promote economic and personal development. B, to improve the quality of life for the identified populations. C, to enhance knowledge through the process of demonstration, education, and mentoring to incite community youth and adults to invest in their ability to change. D, to create a community atmosphere that is conducive to socioeconomic growth and development. E, to redirect the goals and expectations of area residents, resulting in a quantifiable reduction in juvenile delinquency, gang activity, and an increase in home ownership. In summary, the specific purposes for which this corporation is organized include, but are not limited to, the educational, economic, and social enrichment for the residents of the area of Pitt County, known as north of the Tar River. And our current address is 2197 Old River Road in Greenville, and our phone number listed as 252-215-3064. Now, there's a whole lot going on in Pitt County that's very exciting. A lot of growth, which is good. The roads, the hospital and university expansions, the home developments, the businesses coming in, the business expansions, all wonderful things. We know, however, most of it is happening south of the river. The reasons for that, probably the major one is the layout of the land itself. It's not a lot you can do about flat lands that hold water. We can only manage it as best as technology and the law allows, I guess. Still, we know that the area is home to a lot of folks. And it's the agency's purpose to make it a more wholesome place to call home. We also know that government can't do everything, isn't supposed to, that the heavy lifting really has to be done by the citizens themselves. And we're a group of citizens that want to take on some of these things. To that end, we're concerned about everything on the one hand from the roadside trash to curb appeal of our neighborhoods. To the other hand, we're concerned about good relationships with the sheriff's department and everything in between. The idea being, of course, that we want to make the area or work to make the area as attractive as possible to attract the right kind of development, to attract the right kind of industries, retailers in particular. So we'll collaborate with any agency, government or otherwise, churches. We've already done so, again, to make the area more attractive to businesses or developers. In short, if you should see our stationery across your desk, or you should hear about the association in conversation, we hope that you would think favorably of us. Another way of looking at it, you're selling Pitt County as a whole all the time, and we want to give you more ammunition to do it. Thank you for your time, and again, we want to wish each and every one of you a blessed Christmas holiday. Happy New Year. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay. Now we have the manager report. Scott, if you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, just a few things to report on. Your meeting dates coming up in the month of January of 2020. You have one meeting in the month of January on the 13th. There'll be a 9 a.m. meeting. And then your next regular meeting will be Monday, February 3rd, 2020, and again, that's 9 a.m. You do have a capital budget workshop, which we normally have, which basically kicks off the budget process on the capital side. That'll be Monday, January 27th at 8 a.m., running until approximately noontime, and that'll be in our Emergency Operations Center. On item C, we wanted to recognize our PATS Director, Cam Coburn, who's in the audience tonight, for a recognition he has earned and received from the North Carolina Emergency Management for a certification, executive level. And basically, this is again, a North Carolina Emergency Management certification that he was awarded, and this was awarded at a recent conference that he attended. And basically, it recognizes an individual's efforts to strengthen and enhance the professional competencies of themselves and their local agencies. And we'd just like to applaud him for taking the initiative to receive this.
Okay.
Item D on the agenda, Pitt County Public Health would like to apply for a $5,000 Smile Safari Dental Program grant before the Delta Dental Foundation, and there's no county funds on this, so they'll be applying for it. If they receive it, they'll come back to you to do a budget amendment and proceed forward on that. Item E, if our Public Information Office will put on the screen for the public, we would like to announce the North Carolina Department of Transportation is developing a statewide transportation plan. As part of that, they have a long-range transportation survey they are encouraging members of the public to fill out, and this is for the plan called the NC Moves 2050 plan. So this is obviously a 30-year plan moving forward as to the different modes and types of transportation that the state of North Carolina would utilize, and they're seeking the public's input to help develop that plan. Mr. Chairman, other than, I think we forgot to mention at the very beginning of the meeting, I think Commissioner Ward said she may have to leave at 7 and asked to be excused when she had to leave.
Okay, very good. Could we get a motion to excuse Commissioner Ward?
Second.
Okay, has been moved and promptly second. Commissioner Ward, you are excused. Let it be known by just your vote, please. Yeah, very good. Items for consent.
Mr. Chairman, move that we approve the item for consent.
Okay.
Second.
Has been moved and promptly second that we approve. Please vote. for discussion, Rural Internet Initiative. Scott?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and board members, on items for discussion tonight, you have before you a proposal. Commissioner Nunley has been speaking with.
Is everyone hearing you out there?
Can everybody hear me?
Because we're getting ready
Okay.
to talk about internet, so I
If,
want them to hear it.
If our Public Information Office can turn me up a little bit, maybe, on the in-house audio. So this is titled Rural Net Internet Initiative, and Commissioner Nunley had approached myself and the County Attorney Janice Gallagher to discuss this, and I'm going to let him kind of present his proposal here. I wanted to kind of, in light of this, paint it in light of our authorization and what's kind of going on in the state level with the General Assembly. There's been a bill in this current session, House Bill 431. It's a current bill that's being, I guess, debated or considered, has not been passed yet, and basically this bill would give the county the authority in public right-of-ways to extend internet or fiber in the public right-of-ways. It's a little bit different than what Commissioner Nunley is going to propose tonight, but this would assist providers to lay the cable, and then the county would partner with private providers in terms of leasing that cable in public right-of-way to extend cable down the road. So we're still waiting to receive that authority from the state. There's another bill, House Bill 387. This is actually part of a mini budget grant that was passed by the General Assembly. This provides $150 million over 10 years, or actually creates $15 million per year over the 10-year period. And these would be grant funds to jurisdictions based upon the conditions in the grant. But again, these are funds that would be utilized in the public right-of-way versus the proposal we have from Commissioner Nunley is a little bit different. And I didn't know, Commissioner Nunley, if you wanted to, do you want to take the lead on maybe your points on your proposal?
Sure, I can do it. And I think the idea here is not to hammer out exactly what needs to happen, but just to have an acknowledgement that we have an issue in our county, in particular in the rural areas of our county, of a lack of access to broadband internet, and that being internet that is not accessible to a household of 100 megabytes per second or more. And I've had a number of constituents reach out to me that have attempted to have internet connected, and the internet service provider has indicated they're willing to connect it, but because there maybe it's a one standalone house 100 feet or 200 feet off the line, that the homeowner cost for connecting could be anywhere from $800 to $1,800. Sometimes can be upwards of $2,500. And discussing the issue with some of the internet service providers, it became apparent that unlike sewer and some of the other utilities, the line is not really the expensive piece of the puzzle here. And I think a lot of times when we're thinking about connecting utilities, there's a thought amongst, I guess, thinkers that they're looking at utility connections that getting the line out there is really the expensive part. But what's become evident, the expensive part is really the port that individual homeowners hook into. And if there's a development, developers typically would contact those service providers, and you'd have a cluster of 50 to 100 homes. That service provider will take up the cost of connecting those, provided there's connectivity ability, but they'll take up the cost of providing those ports for the housing developments. In rural parts of our county, and in a lot of our districts, we have residents that really just live on, right off the line. And I guess in the media world, you would call that the kind of the last mile. It's not really a description of the mile itself, but getting from where everyone that's in the developed part of the county, getting accessibility to what is more and more a necessary item in the household, which is broadband internet. So the policy proposal is really to come up with, or have staff brainstorm coming up with a way to provide individual homeowners with a path toward a subsidized accessibility for that connectivity, to try to reduce some of the cost to the homeowner, with the idea that
there's a inequity in that our rural residents are foot with a bill of $1,800 on an individual residence, where someone that lives in the city or a development with a little bit more homes is not having to foot the bill. And so the proposal would be to create a sort of grant match program whereby county residents who do not qualify for a standard broadband cable and internet connection may apply to the county for a partial subsidy to connect to the main line, where the utility has agreed that they will in fact connect it and install the line if the consumer can come up with 100% of the cost. And the goal, of course, would be to afford homeowners that are less able to foot the bill on that to come up with those funds. And speaking with Ms. Gallagher and Scott, there seem to be some restrictions on what can and cannot be done here. And I think in a lot of ways, because the rural internet connectivity problem has to do with residents that are kind of one-offs along the line, the cost of, in estimating the cost of what we could do as a commission, if we were able to identify grant funds, potentially ask staff to see if there's ability with the recent designation of Tier 1 status, use that as a springboard, accessibility to grant funds or other sources of revenue that don't involve additional tax to our public, but just ways to come up with some sort of program that would allow these residents that need access. And so this is really just to start the conversation and to hopefully open up our staff to start to work on paths toward finding something that would be viable and maybe help those residents.
Commissioner Nunley, that your proposal would take like a line in the public right-of-way, would it take it on private property then to the residents?
It's my understanding and this is just my understanding, and I'm no tech expert, but it's my understanding that when a homeowner would call, and I'll just use a specific homeowner that I spoke with as an example, but without using the name, would call the internet service provider. The internet service provider would say, well, you're outside of our standard service area, and you're a standalone house at the end of the line. Our company will not pay to connect that line, but you as homeowner can pay $1,800 to have the line run, which is not expensive, but then have the port installed at the end of that line whereby you can connect and have it run to your house. The line from that port to the house, it's my understanding that may not actually be on that homeowner's property, but there has to be a fiber connection that home has to be run off on. And the thought too is that because it's last mile connectivity and we're talking about areas of the county, presumably those ports could also be accessed by other homeowners if there happen to be other ones that pop up. Because the line, again, unlike sewer, the line's not the expensive part. It's really the connection ports. And it's my understanding those are not necessarily on the homeowner's property. Those are on a utility right-of-way, and that they just have to be connected into. So the big cost is not running that line. It's the line and the port that connects those two sources.
I'd like to support this effort for the staff to start looking into it. This county is not developed equally throughout. And internet is very important. When I first came to the board, they were talking about paperless books for students. And we just cannot do it because internet is not all the way equal throughout the county. And if I didn't say let's do it, I'm saying let's start it pursuing, because we just cannot keep waiting about good development when we are the hub of the East. And we just need to look into what is available. Now, you mentioned $150 million in grant. Is that for the state or for the county?
That is $150 million that's, and there's some tier designation between Tier 2 and Tier 1 counties with those money. But again, my understanding is the intent is that would go into public right-of-ways compared to private property.
I have, I received some complaints on Oakley Road. I think there's more than about 20 residents out there who cannot get internet, and they are asking for it. And if we are going to be really leaders in the East, we have to open our visions and our mind to sort of embrace the total community. And the students in some counties drive to McDonald's and sit outside and get a Wi-Fi. I've seen them do it in Kinston as well. But I would like, since we are leaders, to become leaders. Start looking into ways to make the life and the quality of life and the education of life for our children a bit more amenable to what our needs are. I support this effort in investigating and researching what we need to do. Not that I'm saying let's put money in it, but if we're going to get to where we need for the future, we can't do without internet. Mayor Brown in Bethel tells me how she has to walk outside sometime to get connectivity, even with a simple phone. So you know, and I tell you, even though I might be a little incapable sometime of working the internet, and I know this phone works me, but internet is just not the same throughout the county. And I am certainly supportive of keeping some farms intact because I really like fresh vegetables. And we can find a way to work what the people in the area want, as well as supporting growth and development. Because all of the professions over here on this board use internet. Can't do without it now. So I think we should pursue looking into it at least so that we can bring some strong development.
And commissioners, I think that the key here is this proposal is not for, this is to build out infrastructure so that homeowners can connect. Because at the end of those lines, it's a situation where the high cost is because that homeowner's the only one at the end of the line, and so that homeowner would be taking the cost. These are situations where, again, it's building out infrastructure. We're not talking about necessarily running, the cost of the line to the home. We're talking about building out infrastructure that can be ported in.
Yeah. Looking into it.
I think this is yes, sir.
So I've had several people that live out in Gardnerville and Clay Root and Grifton on that side of Aden reach out about internet. So this would take the infrastructure out there so that those residents that live way out there in the country can also have access to internet.
Yeah, I think and I think that the goal is to have staff look at ways we could do that. But that's the hope, is that we've got entire towns that don't have broadband. But
yeah. And I don't live that far out. I live close to the city of Greenville, and you'd be surprised what I would put through to get internet at my house and get a telephone. And I'm in the ETJ area of the county. Doesn't make good sense.
Okay. Commissioner.
I'd like to hear from our attorney on this.
Oh, in terms of the authority, I think there are two probably significant limitations. And I think the analysis is different if you look at it from the perspective of a connection from an existing line to a home versus building out infrastructure. And so if you look at it in terms of building out infrastructure, remember that as counties, we only have the authority that's given to us by the state of North Carolina through a statute. Currently, counties do not have the authority to provide service, cable or internet, and that's not what's being asked. Nor do we have the authority to run lines for the provision of service. But that's what House Bill 431 is proposing to give us the authority to do. It's not allowing the county to be a cable or internet service provider, but it is allowing a county to run a line in the right-of-way and lease that line back to the service provider so that the service provider can provide service to homes that they might otherwise not be able to afford to serve or make a profit by serving because of the expense associated with serving just a few homes. So in other words, if it would cost the service provider X amount of dollars and their business model shows they need to serve 50 homes to recoup that investment, the county could lay the line, subsidize that cost, lease it back to the internet service provider, and then maybe they could serve 5 or 10 homes, right? So the government, if this bill were to pass, could have the authority to assist in laying those lines. House Bill 431 has not yet passed, so we do not yet have that authority, but we might gain that authority. Alternatively, if we're looking not at laying lines or attempting to subsidize the provision of the infrastructure, if we're looking at potentially a grant fund that would assist in funding the connection from an existing fiber line to the home, there's no explicit authority to do that either. But in talking with Commissioner Nunley, I dug a little bit deeper, and in consulting with the School of Government, there's an interpretation under 153A 376 that allows counties to establish and fund programs that are concerned with employment, economic development, crime prevention, child care, health, drug abuse, education, and welfare needs of persons of low and moderate income. I think you could make a reasonable interpretation that funding a program such as Commissioner Nunley is suggesting would fall within the scope of this authority. So that gives you the authority to do it, but there's one catch. It gives you the authority to do it for low to moderate income people. And that's low to moderate income people generally as defined by CDBG, by federal low mod income standards. The big catch with that is that you can't use property tax revenue to fund it. You would have to use, because there's a statute that says you can do this, but you may not fund these programs with any state or local tax proceeds, and that includes property taxes, sales taxes, franchise taxes, or occupancy taxes. But you could fund it with non-tax unrestricted fee revenues. So there may be fees that the county collects. There might be interest income that's unrestricted that the county may collect. There might be available funds or grant funds, for example, that could be used to fund a program, but it could not be your tax revenues. So those are your two big restrictions. I think to lay the line infrastructure, I'd say you don't have the legal authority at this time. To set up sort of a grant program to connect homes to existing lines, you can do it, I believe, for low, moderate income persons with non-tax revenues if you choose to go down that road.
Question. Yes, sir. Is that low, moderate, is that a spot like individual households, or is it an area?
So I may need to look into that further. My first impression is that it would be an individual household, because I think in a grant program, it would be application-based, and so you would apply per homeowner to determine low, moderate income, and you would do kind of a similar analysis. And I'd look to how we do it in other programs for community development, potentially lean on James Rhodes and Planning and Development Services to see how they analyze, but I believe it would be per property and not per neighborhood.
And that, there would be a way to work this for renters and not just homeowners? Or is it, or what we're talking about, something that would be restricted?
I think we need to further research.
Yeah.
But right now, this is kind of a proposal out there that we really haven't developed any details on.
Yeah, I would almost think you would have to look toward the homeowner because you would be providing infrastructure that would remain with the land. Potentially, a renter could apply with the homeowner's consent, but I think when you look at low to moderate income, like we do for Candlewick Sewer, for example, you don't consider the income necessarily of the renter, you look at the home itself. And so I'll have to look into that further to verify, but that'd be something we
And
can
also
certainly.
low to moderate income housing. I'm speaking specifically of units in Fountain where we ran into this, and we're the last mile, and the service providers want a guarantee of so many units in that. In Deerfield will guarantee, and there's just no way we could do that. Plus, they want this upfront money to get there, and so that's a population that I think is very much at need in this development. And I
And it would
appreciate
be-
Chris doing this and the support. I think it's vital, not just for the individual households, but in a town like Fountain, it would be really helpful for economic development to have the ability for people to rent spaces or to purchase buildings in town with high-speed internet and to run their businesses out of those inexpensive storefronts.
Mr. Coulson.
So Janice, you mentioned fees. What kind of fees, and what would be the source of those fees? In other words, would it be the users themselves that benefit? Would they be paying the fees? Or could these fees be charged against all citizens of Pitt County?
They would have to be fees that are unrestricted, so I wouldn't anticipate it to be a fee against the person who's receiving the benefit. Because in this particular case, if they could pay the fee, they could probably pay to contribute towards the connectivity. They would need to be fees that were not restricted. So it couldn't be permit fees, for example, because permitting fees have to be used for permitting purposes. You'd have to find an unrestricted fee.
One item might be like the interest earnings on fund balance, but we budget, the current interest earnings we receive, we budget to balance the budget. So we would have to either cut in some area or raise revenues otherwise so we're not supplanting taking those fees from one area to apply to another. So
Right, you couldn't take an unrestricted fee, use it for this purpose, and then raise the tax to fill that gap.
In response to the question that Commissioner Colson asked, I get complaints about when it comes down to fees on the the bill that you get, the dollar amount for the taxation changes over a period of time. Every month, it may go up for a month. If you get it put in for $59, it can get to $100 real quick. So, and nobody, you really can't determine how the fees rise when you know that taxes in this county is 7 cents on the dollar or something like that or whatever. But the fees change with internet, meaning that there is a different thing.
But
So-
you're, Mary, if I may, you're referring to, I think, something other than what I'm referring
Okay.
to, because
All right.
we're talking about, you're talking about the private sector and what it charges you for a service. And this would be a fee that would be put upon the citizens by, if we were allowed to, us, county commissioners.
Commissioner.
Janice, in seeking grants to fund, say, just kind of do away with it, we don't want to raise taxes to do something like this.
Definitely not.
But if we're looking for grant funds, or if we want to engage partners in the community to help contribute to such a fund, do you see any restriction other than what those individual programs would, for us to be able to utilize those funds to fund such a program?
No, if those funds could be generated from other sources, partnering municipalities, local nonprofit organizations, or anybody who wanted to contribute towards a fund, that would be sufficient.
And one other thing, but going back to you, since you're the one really proposing this, how do you prioritize that? Because like with everything else, there's always more need than there is ever revenue.
I think the idea, Tom, is that Commissioner Colson, sorry,
Tom's fine.
The unique problem with rural internet connectivity is that there's not an economy of scale for the providers to get it there. And so it provides us an opportunity, if we're willing to plug the gap, so to speak, is that we're dealing with individual homeowners, because those are the folks in that last mile. We're talking about 1, 2, 5, all residents of our county, but we're not talking about 1,000 people. And so the idea is that if we allow staff to be creative about it, maybe we can really address these problems, have a huge impact. But it's for the reason why the utility service providers don't pay for it. For that same reason, because the numbers are so small, we could have a tremendous impact on the ones that actually need it. So that's kind of the idea, is that it's a big problem, but maybe one that we could really make a dent in.
if we look into it.
All right.
So if the board would like staff to further look in this, report back at a future meeting, we'd be happy to do so.
I see no harm in it.
I think that's a consensus of the board. And also, I think, as Janice was talking, House Bill 441 and 387 is something that you're going to continue to monitor. This could be, Chris, Mr. Nunley, a game changer if this thing can come into fruition. So I want to thank you for your looking into that, your exploration in that. And but we'll move on as continue to be monitored by our county attorney, our county manager, and other concerns. So thank you again for that presentation.
Mr. Chairman, could I just have clarification? Do you want us to look into and bring back adding infrastructure where there isn't, or connecting homes where there is infrastructure, or both?
I think the both. I think the both. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I think with an idea that we somehow blanket the county and what the options are for that.
Very good. Thank you very much. Item for decision, Scott.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, board members, first item for items of decision, the distribution of additional JCPC funds. That's for the Juvenile Crime Prevention Council. This is for the Raise the Age initiative. This is expansion funding that would go to JCPC. There is no local match required for these funds. The amount is $62,660. The JCPC Council has met and has made a recommendation for the distribution of these funds.
Very good.
You need a motion to approve?
Yes, ma'am.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. Let it be known by your vote, please.
Whatever we can to help the youth.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Spice. Okay,
we're
Scott,
gonna end
appointment to
early.
the Oversight Committee.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have an appointment to the EMS Oversight Committee, and this will be for the non-emergency seat on this Oversight Committee. The committee itself is recommending Jeff White to be appointed, and you will need to approve this as an exception, as he lives in Wilson County, but he has a business that he operates in Pitt County. Commissioner Huggins sits on the Oversight Committee, too.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve.
Okay, it's been moved to approve it. And second, let's vote, please. Okay, very good. Scott?
Okay, next, you have an appointment to the Grifton Planning Board, and this is for an ETJ member, which is their extraterritorial jurisdiction.
Move approval.
Recommending Tom Albritton.
Okay, it's been moved to approve.
Second.
Second. Let's vote, please. Very good. Scott, appointment to the Fireman.
Okay, yeah, your last appointments and reappointments would be to the local Firemen's Relief Fund Board. You have a list on page 96 and 97 of the various fire-related people to the Firemen's Relief Fund Board for each of the different volunteer fire departments. Some of these will need to be considered for an exception, as they will have served more than the number of terms per your appointment policy. But you
Can
have
we
a,
accept them blanket?
yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve.
Second that.
Let's vote, please.
All right.
Very good. Thank you very much. Commissioner comments, we'll start with Laura.
No comment.
No.
Merry Christmas to all.
Just on that NC Moves 2050, folks that are watching, I would hope that you check that survey out. DOT has also rolled back out this program called Complete Streets, and they're very interested in a major difference in how they're proceeding now is about 30% of the decision-making for new projects will come from this survey with citizen input, and the survey includes lots of questions about public transportation and bicycles and other alternative methods of transportation. And again, if you just Google that NC Moves 2050, you'll get a survey that you can take there. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Northern Pitt County Improvement Association, as well as the Belvoir Community and Crime Watch for their leadership in pulling together the meeting that we had on Thursday night. I think it was very helpful to the community. I have received some feedback, and I'd like to say to the rest of the citizens, this is just the beginning. We want improvement in our area, and we need to come together, embrace each other as well as our community, do what we can to make it happen. And I can support that effort. In the long run, maybe we'll come up with a plan that we can all buy into and present to the county to say, listen, this is what, by living in the county, in that area, what we feel like we need to make our life better and make our children a bit more meaningful to us. I appreciate all you do for the citizens throughout the county in all the low-lying areas and the outreach section, because you work overall for all in the county. And we will be better and the best leader in the East. Thank you.
No comment, thank you.
Hope everyone has a
Merry Christmas. I forgot that.
Mary covered it.
And with that, and with that, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to all of you. But could I get a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we adjourn.
I second.
It has been moved and properly second, and the meeting now
got to
stands
vote
adjourned.